Hi, I'm Jessica. I work in an office and I'm 35 years old. Right now, my husband Bob and I are staying with his parents because he got transferred. But don't worry, it's just temporary. Bob seems happy to be back in his old home, but I'm really eager to find our own place and move out soon. The thing is, I don't get along with my in-laws very well, especially my mother-in-law. She's always been a bit mean, but now that we're living together, she's even tougher to deal with. Jessica, why haven't you gone shopping yet? You missed the early sale at the supermarket. You're not very good at shopping efficiently, are you? I forgot to mention, I work from home with permission from my company, but I still have to work during the weekdays. So I don't have the chance to go shopping during the supermarket's early bird sale time. Mom, I've told you many times I work during the day, so I can only go shopping after 5 p.m. But every time I say this, my mother-in-law starts criticizing me. Look at her, so full of herself, can't even have a child. Bob and I don't have kids. We haven't gone to the hospital to see if there's a reason why. I really wanted a child, but with Bob's salary, we couldn't afford the expensive treatments to help us have one. Even before we moved in with Bob's parents, my mother-in-law's mean comments bothered me, but it was easier to handle when we lived apart. Now that we're together all the time, I hear her rude remarks nonstop. My father-in-law doesn't say mean things directly, but he bothers me in his own way. He thinks women over 30 are old, and since I'm 35, he treats me like I'm ancient. Hey, old lady, pass me the ashtray. And why are you wearing a skirt? Nobody wants to see your legs. I want to say, if I'm old, what does that make you? About to turn 60. I'm not a pushover, so I always talk back when they say something rude about me. But that just makes our relationship worse, because they think I'm being bossy. The atmosphere in the house is always tense, and I'm starting to feel the strain of living here. But after Bob's transfer, he started working more on weekends and going on more business trips, so we haven't had a chance to talk about moving out. Jessica, I have another business trip this weekend. You just got back from one yourself. Seems like this new branch requires a lot of travel. Before his transfer, Bob had to work late sometimes, but he hardly ever worked on weekends or went on business trips. I get that work changes when you change jobs, but isn't this a bit too much? Because of all this, we haven't been able to find a new place to live, even though we were only supposed to stay with my in-laws temporarily. What if we end up having to stay with them for a long time? That thought really scares me. Then, one day, something unexpected happened. While unpacking Bob's bag after his business trip, I found a piece of paper in his pocket. It turned out to be a printout from a travel website. At first, I thought it was just his flight and hotel details for his trip. But as I looked closer, I couldn't believe what I saw. There was a hotel reservation that included tickets to Disneyland for 2 people, and the date was for the same day Bob said he was on his business trip. Obviously, Bob's work has nothing to do with Disneyland. They deal with seafood, not theme parks. But that's not the point. This meant that Bob wasn't really on a business trip. He was actually spending 2 days at Disneyland. And since the hotel reservation was for 2 people, it was pretty clear he was there with someone else. While I was still processing this shock, I heard Bob humming "It's a Small World After All" in the shower, the famous song from Disneyland. He must have been reminiscing about his trip and humming without realizing. But it seems like fun attractions aren't the only things on his mind during these business trips. I was so furious that I was ready to storm into the bathroom and confront Bob. But just as I was about to, his phone rang. I was too angry to think straight, so I picked up the call without hesitation. Hello. For a brief moment, I heard a woman's voice, and then the call ended abruptly. Could it be? I was convinced that the call was from the woman Bob went to Disneyland with, his mistress. When she heard my voice on Bob's phone, she must have panicked and hung up. I decided to check the call history on his phone. Bob isn't really careful about security, so I guessed his passcode might be his birthday. And just like that, the phone unlocked. But what I found on his phone left me reeling. There was undeniable evidence of his affair all over it. The photo gallery was full of selfies of him and another woman. The dates on the photos matched up with the times Bob said he was on business trips or working late. I couldn't believe how careless he was, leaving behind pictures of their intimate moments. I checked the call history again and saw the name Melissa Smith. So I looked for the same name in his WhatsApp contacts and opened their chat. Bob, I love you. I want to be your wife soon. It seemed like this Melissa was hoping to marry Bob, Maybe she's the one causing trouble in our relationship. While I was thinking about this, Bob came out of the bathroom. "Ah, that was refreshing," he said casually, drying his hair with a towel. Facing Bob, who was drying his hair with a towel as if nothing was wrong, I didn't waste any time. "Feeling refreshed, huh? Seems like you're refreshed in more ways than one, huh?" I confronted him. "Who is Melissa Smith?" I demanded. Bob flinched at the mention of her name. "So it's true. You've been lying about your business trips and spending time alone with this woman, Melissa Smith. Were all those trips and extra work days just lies? It's unforgivable." "Why would you? How did you?" I pointed my smartphone at Bob, showing him the evidence. "All the proof is right here in this phone. And don't talk about privacy invasion when you're the one who's been cheating. It's ironic that a man who's cheating can complain about privacy. If you don't want people to see, set a better password." Before we got married, Bob and I promised each other he wouldn't cheat. I told him if he did, I'd leave him immediately. My feelings haven't changed. I can't stay married to someone who's with another woman. Let's get a divorce. When I mentioned divorce, Bob surprisingly agreed without arguing. "Yeah, I guess so." It caught me off guard. I expected more resistance. Was he already prepared for divorce once he got caught cheating? "I'll go get the divorce papers tomorrow. You can tell your parents," I told him. Bob's agreement was surprisingly casual, but once the decision was made, there was no turning back, and I had no intention of doing so. Was this the end of our marriage? I felt a pang of sadness. The next day, I left early to pick up the divorce papers from the city office and run some other errands. When I returned home late at night, I found my husband and his parents waiting for me. "So you finally decided to come back. We were wondering how long you were going to wander around," my mother-in-law remarked as soon as she saw me. With Bob present, she should already know about his cheating and our decision to divorce. Shouldn't she say something like an apology before making a snide comment? But instead of apologizing, my mother-in-law said something unbelievable. "Well, it doesn't matter. At least you're finally leaving. We don't want to see your face anymore, so it's just as well you've been gone all day." "What do you mean?" I asked, taken aback. With a smug smile, my mother-in-law replied to my question, "Exactly as I said. I'm fed up with seeing your face. Now that Bob is back, you were just in the way. You're always talking back and you lack any charm. Even when I tried to make you uncomfortable enough to leave, it took you so long to catch on. I finally had to use my secret weapon." "Secret weapon?" I repeated, confused. My mother-in-law looked pleased. "You already know the name of Bob's girlfriend, right?" "Yes, something like Smith." Why was she checking if I knew the name of Bob's mistress? You see, I have a friend from my book club, Mrs. Smith. Her daughter is such a well-mannered, charming young lady. She's 10 years younger than you, only 25. At that age, she can have kids easily. Then my mother-in-law dropped a bombshell. So I introduced Mrs. Smith's daughter to Bob. Excuse me? I was shocked. I never expected my mother-in-law to say something like this to me. "Are you saying, mother-in-law, you arranged Bob's affair?" "Oh, arranged sounds so scandalous. I simply introduced them," she replied proudly. I couldn't believe that a mother would encourage her own son to cheat on his wife, and she was so proud to tell me about it. What a terrible mother. Well, I had no other choice. Bob is our only child. We need him here. I would have even accepted you as my daughter-in-law if you'd had children. But all you did was work, never giving us any grandchildren," she continued. Beside her, my father-in-law nodded in agreement, so he was aware of his wife's actions. "Do you understand? A 35-year-old woman who can't even have kids is no longer necessary. If you get it, then hurry up and leave," my mother-in-law said triumphantly, pointing at me. After a moment of silence, I replied, "I understand your perspective very clearly. I'll leave as you wish. I'll take all my things with me." "Oh, please do. I doubt you have much to take with you anyway. Do you need help moving?" My mother-in-law laughed. Even though she didn't know it, I would have the last laugh. "No, it's fine. Don't worry about me. Everything's already arranged." "Huh?" My mother-in-law looked surprised since I wasn't crying or upset. "Besides, mother-in-law, I'm well aware that you were helping Bob cheat on me." "What?" Bob asked in a panic. "So, what did you expect? That I would let you cheat behind my back and not say anything to the other woman?" "I made sure to note down her phone number when I checked your phone yesterday," I said calmly. Melissa was quite surprised when I called her and said, "I'm Bob's wife. I'd like to meet with you. Apparently you've been lying to her, claiming that you're single." I set the record straight. Bob, my mother-in-law, and my father-in-law were all stunned. They never expected me to take such decisive action in just one day. Melissa found out that she was the other woman in your affair, and she was really upset. And Mrs. Smith was furious too. Bob, your mother, and you, father-in-law, she even talked about suing both of you for marriage fraud. I couldn't help but feel for her. So I promised to assist her in any way I could. What? Bob was visibly shaken, and my mother-in-law was in the same state. Considering the ordeal Melissa went through, I've chosen not to seek any compensation from her. Instead, I'll increase the amount I'm demanding from you, Bob, and you, mother-in-law and father-in-law. Compensation. Why should we have to pay for anything? My father-in-law blurted out in panic. It's one thing if it's just Bob, but we're not involved. He seemed to expect his son to face consequences for his actions, but they never imagined they'd be held accountable too. You think you can benefit without facing any consequences? That's not how it works, I replied. Actually, you are involved. The emotional distress caused by your behavior is more than enough reason for compensation, don't you think? As I said this with a smile, my father-in-law fell silent. And let's not forget what I do for a living. I work at a law firm. Why don't I consult with my boss, the attorney, and see just how much we can squeeze out of you in compensation? I already told my lawyer at the company about what's going on. Then we heard a car pull up in the driveway. Oh, they're here. Hi, we're from a moving company, I said with a friendly smile as I went to the door. Thanks for coming at such a late time. I'm sorry for asking on short notice. No worries. We had an opening for the night shift. It actually worked out well for me. I got some other stuff done. So let's get started right away. Oh, and be careful, there are some fragile things. As I welcomed them in, a bunch of movers came into the house and started collecting our stuff. Wait, hang on. My mother-in-law interrupted. They started packing up my stuff just like I asked, moving quickly and efficiently. They packed up not just my clothes, books, and computer, but also the things in the living room and kitchen. Hey, wait a minute. Don't take that, it's ours. My mother-in-law complained. No, I brought all of these things here when we moved in. They're mine, I explained calmly. When Bob and I first moved here because of his job, the appliances in the in-laws' house were old and worn out. I couldn't stand it, so I had our appliances sent over from our old apartment. Now it seemed like my mother-in-law had gotten used to the new appliances and thought they were hers. There was a robot vacuum, a cordless cleaner, a fancy oven that could do lots of things, an induction cooktop, a special hairdryer, and an espresso machine. You're taking everything, you greedy woman. My mother-in-law yelled and tried to grab me, but Bob stopped her. Mom, it's all Jessica's stuff. We can't change that, he explained. It looked like Bob understood what was happening, but my mother-in-law wasn't ready to give up. Once you get used to better appliances, it's hard to go back, right? If you're not happy, why don't you just buy new ones? But after paying compensation, it seems unlikely you'll have enough money for fancy appliances. While all this was happening, the movers were quickly loading my things into their truck as I directed them. They nodded to me and climbed into the truck. All right, I'm heading to the new address too. Please make sure everything arrives safely, I told them. As I watched the moving truck drive away, I got into my car. Wait, this car is mine too. Where's that truck going? Bob asked. Huh? Oh, I'm taking it to my old apartment, the one I lived in before we had to move because of your job transfer. It's my apartment. The apartment I bought when I was single was put up for sale by a real estate agent because Bob got transferred for work. But since the price was too high, it never sold, and I still own it. The agent kept suggesting lowering the price, but I'm glad I didn't. I never thought something like this would happen. As I buckled my seatbelt, I chuckled quietly, thinking that maybe, just maybe, I had a feeling deep down that this would happen. What? Bob looked confused, making a puzzled face. I set the selling price higher than the market rate on purpose so it wouldn't sell. That way, I could always go back to my apartment, I explained. Bob seemed to lose his strength upon hearing my words. You're. Feeling confident in my plan and letting my guard down, I suddenly felt a shove from my mother-in-law, who charged at me yelling. I groaned in pain as she tried to throw a cutting board at me for another attack, but then she was tackled by a black object and fell down screaming. Ah, thank you, Blackie, I said, holding the black object, a stray cat named Blackie. I quickly got into the moving truck and rushed to my new place to get away from my mother-in-law. I don't know why Blackie the stray cat was there at that moment, but I'm sure he came to help me because he has a strong sense of justice. I'll give him some catnip as a thank you gift later. After that, Bob and I got divorced. The law firm where I work filed a lawsuit for compensation against Bob and his parents. It's a real blessing that the young lawyers in training at the office took on my case for almost no fee at all. Even though a new young lawyer is handling my case, I feel safe because they have the support of a senior lawyer. As for the lawsuit against Melissa Smith, the senior lawyer himself took it on, not the trainees. He said he will file both criminal and civil lawsuits because of the seriousness of the situation. He mentioned he's excited to file a criminal lawsuit since it's been a while. Even if they sell their house to pay Melissa Smith and me, it probably won't be enough. Thinking about the life of poverty and debt waiting for them, I can't help but smile. I'm alone now, but compared to living with those in-laws and my unfaithful husband, it feels like heaven. For now, I want to enjoy the simple single life with Blackie, the cat I unintentionally brought to my apartment.